Welcome to our very first interview of season 2, Flourish or Fold, Stories of Resilience, where well-known people have the opportunity to tell their lesser well-known stories of resilience. And I will tell you, ladies and gentlemen, I can't think of a more exciting guest for us to kick off our interview series with here on season 2. Because Gerard Adams has been a tremendous force in my life and in the lives of so many others. He is the founder and steward of a company you may have heard of called Leaders Create Leaders. He has single-handedly helped conscious creators, impact-driven entrepreneurs, and heart-led leaders create impact for their business and also for their being. Gerard, welcome. And I am just so delighted to have your energy, your essence, the light and love that you bring to every single interaction that you come to with us today on Flourish or Fold.
Woo! Let's go. I'm excited. And wow, I didn't know I was the opener for season 2. I love it. I love that you're doing seasons. It's something that just brings me back to our show. I've done seasons as well, and it's just so cool. And I'm so grateful to be kicking off season 2 of Flourish or Fold. And you have also made such a huge impact in my life. And I'm just so grateful for you. Our quality time together from Tulum to the Hollywood Hills. And so I'm excited to dive in with you. Thank you so much for having me on the show, Taryn.
It's a delight and an honor to have you here. It really is. Some of the most profound conversations of my life occurred during our hikes in Runyon Canyon. And I'm just so excited to be able to have you here with us today, because I think our listeners are just going to get tremendous value from getting to hear from you. They'll get a sneak peek into, what happens when Gerard and Taryn go on a hike and talk about what really matters to us in the world. And you are just this tremendously bright, intelligent, savvy, at times scrappy light in the world. I mean, you know how to respond with grace and ease. And you also know when to roll up your sleeves and get your hands dirty and work hard. And I so admire that dichotomy and that just tremendously unique and special skill set that you possess as a tremendously successful entrepreneur, and now a person who is shining the light and making the path clear for entrepreneurs to follow in your footsteps.
Wow. Woo, your way with words is just, it's beautiful. And so I just fully receive that. And I love how you threw in scrappy. It's something that on my journey, this is my 18th year as an entrepreneur, but there was a moment where I want to say maybe like 5 years ago after I sold my company, where like I started to go on this path, spiritual, like my spiritual development. And I kind of resisted that part of me. Like I like tried to get away from that natural born hustler that really made me. And I started to kind of push that part of me away. And it took me a while to like embrace that grit and that scrappiness and make peace with it and realize how far that actually got me in my career. And while I can still embrace this new side of me, which is like been learning about how to honor the divine feminine around me, which has allowed me to build relationships with the likes of powerful women like yourself and to attract the love of my life, and to also learn how to integrate that into my business and my leadership. And so it's just cool because now I feel like integration doesn't happen quickly. We hear that word integration, and truly, like true integration actually takes time. We think we come back from an ayahuasca ceremony or a Tony Robbins event and we're just like, boom, like, oh, okay, all of a sudden. And yes, those major shifts do happen quickly, But real integration takes time, and it's taken me time to finally get to a place of embodying both the scrappy grit, side of me with the graceful ease, flow side of myself. And so, yeah, I appreciate that. Thank you.
You're so welcome. You're so welcome. Talk to us a little bit more about what that integration has been like. These are clearly areas for you that feel like at times they're a dichotomy or maybe even at odds. Can you say more about that process of integration?
Yeah. The first time I heard the word, it was leaving a ceremony with a organization that we both actually went through, One Heart. Mm-hmm. And shout out to One Heart, game changer for me.
What up, One Heart?
One Heart fam. And we were in Costa Rica, and I went through 3 ayahuasca ceremonies that were just absolutely life-changing. I remember after the very first ceremony, I went there with the intention of honoring the divine feminine. I didn't even know what is divine feminine. I didn't even understand that. But I knew that I was ready to call in my queen. I knew I was ready to heal wounds, that some of which I understood from heartbreaks, but some of it felt like just so deep, ancestral. I didn't know, like there was just things for me to heal. And I went through the first ceremony, life-changing, but it was super hard. And I didn't know if I could make it through the second and third. And the shaman kind of gave me some grace. He's like, just show up and if you decide to take the cup again, you can. If you don't want to, that's okay too. And I was like, I don't think I'm going to be able to. Came back that second ceremony, and I saw the courage of everyone in this group. I mean, there was probably 40 like leaders in this tribe, in this circle that night. It caused me to continue to go. It caused me to have the courage to get back up and be one of the last to take that next cup of ayahuasca that second night. And I continued on that third night, both just life-changing ceremonies that I feel like we can go a little deeper on. But I really came out of that with a new profound understanding and reverence for you, the goddess that you are, the queens, the women in the world that are chosen to be the portal, to be the chosen ones that can actually create the greatest gift that we all have, which is life. And it was just so beautiful. And then after those ceremonies, we sat in a circle and we had integration and we talked about it. And at first it was like I felt such a huge shift, like a cellular shift, a shift in my mind, my body, my soul. Like I knew that it had happened, but it was like, now what? Like it was so big that I just started questioning everything about my life and my purpose and my being. And so the real work, what they said is that 80% of the transformation doesn't actually happen in the ceremonies or at the point of where you're getting that wisdom. It's actually in the integration of the practice. And coming back in the real dojo, as we all know, is like when you get back home and now all of a sudden you're back into your relationship with your partner, your business partner, your husband, your wife, your family, your parents. Like, oh snap, like, because now you have a complete shift in consciousness and you've rewired some beliefs in these, and now it's time for you to show up differently and respond differently. And that was for me, like every day kind of, it took me reevaluating my values. It took me reevaluating my routine and the rituals that I practice to continue to ground me into who I get to be every day and how I get to just align to that higher version of me that I was able to experience in a 5D psychedelic experience, and like how I can really tap into that energy of who I'm becoming and really embody that version of me today and focus on like, okay, who do I get to be today? And for me, it's just been practicing, like really listening to my emotions and how I feel, and like just really practicing listening and figuring out like, okay, when I'm triggered and where is that within me, and practicing my conscious communication, practicing when there's conflict. That was a big one for me, like starting to be aware of, okay, when I'm feeling that resistance or that conflict, taking a moment to go within, like, where is that within me? Where do I get to continue to go deeper into my healing? And then how can I really lean into that conflict in a conscious way that's not from a victim mentality or blaming, but like from a place of full responsibility and a place from integrity, and being able to just lean into that. Whereas in the past I would avoid, or I'd run, or I would avoid hard conversations. And it's in the practice for me every day, still today, every single day. It's just practicing leaning into vulnerability, practicing leaning into conflict, and leaning into love.
I love that. I love leaning into love. Ram Dass said something to the effect of, if you think you're so enlightened, go spend a week with your family.
Oh yeah.
And I think that very much encapsulates, I love this idea of like the real dojo. What happens when we get out of ceremony and then live out or practice the life that we desire, or espouse that we want to live. That's beautiful.
Yes.
So, Gerard, you have faced numerous challenges in your life. And so I can't wait to hear the story that you're going to tell us. And of course, Flourish or Fold, Stories of Resilience, is all about dispelling the myth that people that are successful, tremendously successful entrepreneurs like yourself, athletes on the field, actors on the screen, musical artists on the stage, that they got there because their path was seamless or made clear. And I know that it's not that you didn't experience challenge, it's that you've been tremendously responsive and resilient when those challenges showed up in your life. So tell us about a challenge that you feel like has most significantly formed you into the man you are today.
Wow, it's such a great question. I'm so happy that you're telling these stories and that you're creating a platform that allows so many dope leaders in the world to share these stories, because I think sometimes social media can project the journey of success to be all rainbows and gardens, and we can tend to control the narrative of what it can look like, and the truth is that it is not easy, and like it's interesting because like when you're going through this moments of adversity, it sometimes could be, especially if you're not in the work. Like when I look back at those moments of adversity, I'll share one in my earlier part of my career, the moment when I first became a millionaire and lost it all. And I wasn't as far along in my personal development path. And it was so hard for me to see how that was a gift. But looking back at all of these moments of adversity in my life over the last 18 years, and even when I was younger, 18 years specifically in my career, man, I am so grateful for each and every one of them. It has given me truly this skill set, this muscle. It's built this muscle of resilience that has allowed me to appreciate hardship and realize that it is like this, this gift that is going to allow me to to grow and to learn from, and that ultimately there really isn't ever any failing or failure. It's if we don't give up and we look at it as just like a learning experience. And now I've just built that into my ethos and into my culture with my company. And so I'm just so appreciative of like all of those moments. But one in particular for me was like, when I first started my career, I was so passionate about the stock market. My father worked at Prudential Financial, and I would get home from school as a young teenager, and he would make me write down like what the stock ticker and what the stock was at of Prudential, PRU, and he would talk to me about Wall Street all the time, and we would watch movies like Wall Street with Gordon Gekko, and so like I just was really interested in the stock market. And I found my first mentor coming out of high school when I was in college, my first semester, and he was an investor. And it was the first time that I met someone who had made it taking the unconventional path. I had never met really an entrepreneur. I grew up middle class. I didn't grow up with money. And it was the first time I really met someone who's taken that unconventional path. And that mentor inspired me. I dropped out my first semester in college, and I went all in at learning about like deeper about investing, and also about the like internet marketing, digital media. He was a writer. He had built like a massive newsletter online, built a massive blog online, and he was a trader. And so he taught me how to read income statements and balance sheets, and how to look up press releases, and how to look up 10Ks, 10Qs, how to look up SEC filings, and do research on what does a PE mean, a price to earnings ratio, and EBITDA, and all these things at a young age. And I became obsessed. I loved it. And so I started my first company that was a forum called stockspot.com. And it was a platform because I wanted to create a community where other people that were like-minded like me, that wanted to learn about investing and learn about stocks and communicate about like the different companies they were researching. And so I built the community to about 10,000 members online. I would literally like go on every financial message board, AOL back then, like every message board, every forum, every chat room. And I would like promote StockSpot. And I got it to 10,000 members. And one day a CEO comes to me and is like, he emails me and he's like, hey, how do I advertise? Like, how do I get in front of this community? And I had never thought about monetization. I never understood that. Digital media advertising. And so I responded and I was like, oh, wow, okay, I'm interested. And he ended up being a CEO out of New Jersey where I grew up. And so he's like, how old are you? I'm like, oh, I'm 18 years old. He's like, come and meet me. I want to meet you. And so I go there wearing my dad's suit, like shoulder pads, like an orange tie. I saw my dad wear this suit one day, this like navy blue suit. I probably can find a picture of this, right? Pinstripe navy suit, orange tie. Okay. And I show up to this meeting, and I didn't have facial hair back then. I would look like a little kid. And this CEO could not believe that I had built this website. And he was like, I'm going to make you a deal. I'm going to become a mentor of yours, and I'm going to teach you about investor relations. And you're going to teach me how to use this internet thing. And I was like, I couldn't believe that I had an offer for a job. Right. And so he ends up becoming my mentor. I get hired as like someone to learn about and help him with online, and director of investor relations at the time. And I built him. Anyways, I start helping this company that was reinventing the battery technology using nanotechnology. And I loved it. I would go to the lab with them, and as they're innovating this battery technology, and I was using everything I was learning about how to get him exposure online with blogs and just different influencers that were, back then we didn't have like Instagram, but I learned Google pay-per-click advertising, and I used all what I learned about building email lists, and I did direct mail, and it was awesome. And I built them to have the largest shareholder base at any small cap company at that time, 18,000 shareholders. So there I am. Now I'm like 20 years old working with the company. I do this presentation for a live presentation for their product called the Nano Battery. And this was the first big moment of adversity for me. the CEO was like, I want you to put on this event. And so I put on this event, and I get about 300 investors in the room. We were raising capital to take the nano battery into production. And I'm so nervous because I never did public speaking before. So I'm in the bathroom at like 20 years old with cue cards, with my shoulder pad suit again. And I'm like, how am I going to do this? Because I'm going to introduce the CEO and the chief scientist officer. And I'll never forget, the CEO comes in, Ron, and he smacks the cue cards out of my hand. And he's like, Gerard, you just get to be yourself. You got this. Just go out there. So I go out on stage. Hello, everybody. I'm Gerard Adams, Director of Investor Relations. Many of you have seen me from the bottom of the press releases. I've spoken to many of you. Thank you for being here. And this is why I believe in the company. And let me introduce you now to the Chief Executive Officer and Chief Scientist Officer, Dr. Fred Allen. Everyone, they come up. I'm sweating. I'm sitting there. I'm like, holy cow, like they're about to do a live presentation. And when this works, we're going to raise, $10 million and take this thing into mass production. The stock's up 400%. Well, Dr. Fred Allen and CEO Ron get up on stage and give their speech, and they go and they hit this button to show that the nano battery is creating energy. And what do you think happens, Taryn?
I think it didn't work.
Yep, like classic, like Steve Jobs story. And this thing doesn't work. And I've seen it work 100 times in the lab. And my tail between my legs, I was so humiliated. I felt like the biggest failure in my life. And lo and behold, raising hands, stocks crashing. But a guy comes over to me and he's like, hey, kid, I can't believe you got me in the room. Here's my card. Call me. And from that moment, I was like, you know what? This might have failed, but I have a gift. He's right. I did get these people in the room. I did get the story out there. That was like, it gave me a stepping stone. So then I decided to start, because of that, I was like, I do have a gift. I'm going to start an agency to help public companies to tell their story leveraging the internet. And so I start this company and I build it to 10 million in revenue by the time I'm 24 years old. And now I'm like investing into companies I believe in. And the market is just like unbelievable. And I'm up $20 million in the stock market. And lo and behold, the stock market crashes. If you remember the economic collapse around 2008, 2009, I had taken my eye. I thought I was invincible. I'm this young punk Justin Bieber-like kid who like is buying, I got 2 Bentleys, this, that, and the third. And I take my eye off of paying attention to the stock, my portfolio, because I'm up $20 million. I think I'm invincible. And lo and behold, man, the market crashes and I lose all of it. And that was the biggest moment. And so I was so embarrassed. I was so scared. And I felt like a fraud because like all my friends in high school, like I was the guy who made it. Like I was the guy who actually made it out of Belleville, New Jersey, hustling out of Newark. Like I'm the kid who made it. And so they were all coming to me. All my friends now are graduating from this economic collapse and they have college degrees and they can't even get a job. And so they're coming to me like, we got to go work for G. And little do they know that I had just lost everything. And my company, by the way, was a marketing agency for public companies. The market crashed. So not only did I lose all the money in my portfolio, I can't even get clients right now because they're not hiring. So it was like a real moment of adversity for me. And the thing that got me through it was my mother. I couldn't open up to anyone and I was just distraught. And I just finally opened up to my mom and told her what happened. And she was like, son, when I was a little girl, my family comes from Italy, my father's side, and my mother from Colombia. My mom was born in Cali, Colombia. And my mother came here not being able to speak the language. And she said that she lived in an apartment with a family of 5 in a studio apartment. And she told me this story of how she was walking home from school one day and the apartment building was on fire. And her friend said, Jenny, I think that's your building. And she runs home and it is the building. And my mom was scared that our family, was caught in that fire. Well, they got out, but they lost everything. And so we came to the country with nothing. And now we literally got nothing but the shirts on our back. My aunt and uncles and my grandparents and my mother. My mother was the oldest sibling. And so my mother at like 15 years old had to beg her school teacher that she can't come into class and to get tutored at night so that she can go and work in Canal Street in New York City during the winter, never taken a train, never taken a subway, figured out her way to go to Canal Street so that she could be able to get paid under the table to make a little money to help put food on the table for her brothers and sisters and her family. And my mother looked at me and she's telling me this as tears are rolling down her eyes. And she says, son, if I was able to get through that and be able to put this roof over you and your two sisters' heads. And my mom has worked, I've seen my mother work her whole life to provide with my father. And she said, if I was able to get through that, you bet your ass that you can lose everything and they'll never take this and they'll never take this. And she points to her head and her heart. And with tears rolling down her eyes, and that moment was the moment. It was like, oh, I am not going to let this hold me down. And in that moment, I leaned into that adversity, and that was the beginning of when I shifted and adapted to where the world was going and started my next company, which was Elite Daily, which I sold to $1 billion company and built over the next 4.5 years. And so that would be like the most pivotal story that shaped me.
We all just take that in for a minute.
Yeah.
How do you carry elements of that story with you today?
Oh, man. I think for one, the one of the big things that comes up for me is like when we think about our why, it really brings me back to that first and foremost. Like, why am I really doing this in the first place? Because I think we all have this sacred soul contract that God chooses for each and every one of us. And so like, for me, I believe that also happened because at that time, I wasn't ready to have that responsibility of that kind of money just yet too. And so I feel like it allowed me to humble myself, to understand the responsibility that comes with that kind of success. And to get back to my roots and think about why am I doing this in the first place? Because it's not to be the kid who has all the exotic cars and popping off on Instagram and be one of those, influencer entrepreneurs. Like, why am I really doing this? And it just kind of brought me back to my mom and like wanting to take care of my family and wanting to build a lasting, meaningful legacy in my family and become the first millionaire in my lineage and be able to give back to my ancestors and honor my ancestors and then embrace the opportunity to create a meaningful legacy in this lifetime and the sacrifices that have had to be made for generations in their vision for me to get to where I am today and to really have reverence for that. And I would say like, so now everything I do is like coming back to intention. Where is this coming from? Is this coming from the place of where it's I want to really it's going towards that legacy and it's meaningful and it's around family and impact and contribution? Or is this because I want to look a certain way or I want to hit a certain number and getting really clear? Because like we can get caught up and recently my shaman was like, okay, $1 billion, then what? $1 trillion, then what? 100 million, then what? Why? Like really getting clear, like why? Like, why do we want to make all this money? And I think a lot of people don't really sit there and ask that question. why? And I sure as hell didn't ask that question when I was making all that money in the early parts of my career, making millions of dollars. And so now I really am thinking about like, why? Why is this important to me from a micro perspective, which is my why when it comes to my family and legacy? And then also from a macro perspective, how is this aligned to my purpose and the contribution and the impact of what I want to create for the world and for humanity?
Mm-hmm. Mm-hmm. That's beautiful. Do you have a process that you use, Gerard, to differentiate where, sort of where things are coming from? It's this idea of like, how do you determine what those motivations are and where they're coming from?
Well, I'll say like for the first part of that answer, hands down, it's been slowing the fuck down. Like I have been moving so fast. I'm sure you all can relate to this, right? Like we're just going. This project, that project, this, like just so busy in our lives. And I think the biggest thing that the pandemic showed me was like, it's time to slow the fuck down. Like, and just get clear through stillness. And so for me, like my spirituality, my rituals of just meditation, slowing down to like actually listen to my intuition. I really believe in human design. If you never worked with this as a tool, I highly recommend it. Like it's kind of like Myers-Briggs or Colby, but it's really tied to more of like your what time you're born, when and where you're born, and astrology. And it allows you to understand your centers, and it kind of relates to your chakras in a way, and you can understand yourself and what works for you and how you make decisions. And so through human design, I'm what's called a manifesting generator. There's a reflector, projector, manifestor, and generator. When you can also be a manifesting generator, and I'm a manifesting generator. And so the way that I make decisions that works for me is actually through my sacral. And so it's really taking the time, and we teach this in our mastermind because I mean it's just these tools we don't even know about. And so for me, it's like, oh, okay, like I know that's how I make decisions. So it's like getting still, asking the question, and like really listening to that sacral, and that's one of the most important ways. Other than that, it's like just taking the time to really write each year and reevaluate it on a quarterly basis. But like every year, I'm looking and reevaluating what my values are, and I'm setting goals, like really setting those goals. Like, what are your goals this year? What are your goals this quarter? Like making them tangible and writing them out, similar to Taryn, like, you know how the universe works, right? Like when we set things out and we really declare it, we write it, we speak it, we affirm it. We even like I even go as far as creating my own mini ceremonies at home, not with plant medicine, but just like really like the way I manifested my house. It was like one of my goals was like, I want to have a dream home. I created a beautiful ceremony with vision boarding and like feeling into what would it feel like to have this home, and like, what does it look like, and envisioning and visualizing it. And so we get to just like sit down and write, what are your goals financially, in your relationships, in your health, right? In your being, and just like writing those out. And then I basically, now every opportunity that comes my way, it's just like, okay, I use human design. I check my sacral. I listen to my intuition. I create some stillness. I pause instead of just saying yes to things. And then I just evaluate, is this aligned to what I said I was committed to this year in these areas of my life? And if those things check out, then it's a yes. If it don't check out, but I'm still excited about it, then maybe it's just a not right now. And then it's just simply a no. And cultivating that no has been one of the greatest like one of the greatest skills that has been one of the toughest, but one of the most powerful for me over the most recent years as a leader.
That's wonderful. You are such a shining example of having envisioned the work, done the work, and now able to show people how to do the work.
The work works is what one of my best friends says. The work works.
Work works.
Work works.
You said something really fascinating that I wanted to go back to for a moment. You talked about a spiritual belief that you have that God creates a contract for us, perhaps around what we're meant to deliver in this life. Do you say more about that?
Yeah. It reminds me of these stories of adversity. It's like when we go through things that are, this life isn't meant to just be easy. And I just feel like, for me, one of my favorite modalities is storytelling. And when I think about what is extremely unique to us, our story is at like the top of that list. And when we think about how powerful our stories are, and we think about the stories that have come before us, and how we're still, even the story of Jesus, how that has created a ripple of impact still to this day, and like the impact that's had. And so I just feel like everything that we go through is a part of that story. And when we're in it, sometimes we can't understand why something is happening, but we all know that like when we get through it and we get back up and we continue to step forward, no matter how hard it is, on the other side of it is just growth. And not only is it on the other side of it growth for you and transformation and like wisdom, but I believe that our story and what we go through is meant to also inspire and help heal not only ourselves, but heal others. And I think that's like a way that we all can contribute to humanity, and that we all desire that. We all desire to help others. And I don't know, I just feel God has this, God's plan. And just like what I've learned, especially with plant medicine, is the art of trust and surrender. Mm-hmm. And we do play a role because we have the power of choice, of course. And we get to just also surrender to the things that we can't always understand. And that only the God in the universe is like, can really make sense of it. And I guess it's kind of a little hard to explain, but it's just that's what I believe. I just believe God's plan is always bigger, and this that is just something that is just sacred to each and every one of us, is what we go through, and it's part of our story.
It's beautiful. You're such a shining example of being able to merge your faith and your entrepreneurship. And I love seeing you be able to weave both of those together in a beautiful tapestry.
Wow. You are a poet. Do you write poetry?
I do. I do write poetry.
Wow. I can see that. Do you write music?
Not yet.
Oh, have you spoken your poetry out loud?
I have a goal to do poetry slam.
I see that. I really see that. Yes. Oh, there we go. Yes.
On its way. It's on its way. It's being formed, as we speak.
Yeah, I love it. I can see that for you for sure. I actually just did my first ever spoken word poem in my last retreat, and it was like so liberating and healing. And so, yeah, I can't wait to hear your poetry.
I can't wait to hear yours.
I gotta say though, the way you interview is poetry, in my opinion.
Oh, thank you for that. That's beautiful. I'm curious, Gerard, if you could go back in time to any point in your life, if present day Gerard could go back and see any past version of yourself, what past version of yourself would you go back and see? And what would you tell him?
Let's see. I'm choosing between two. One is like God, the inner child work has been so powerful for me over the last year, and I'm choosing between the 12-year-old little boy and then the 28, 20, something like that, 28 young man. Both completely different. Let me see. You pick. Which one you want? The little boy or the young man?
Wasn't 28 like last year?
Yes. I'll take it. I'm 37 now, so I'm 10 years, but I'll take it. For sure.
Let's go back and see 28-year-old Gerard.
Oh, okay. Well, I the reason why I picked out around that age is like at that time I was really just drinking so much. I was like drinking weed, smoking weed, and I just remember dating so many different women, and I just remember the alcohol particularly though. Like I remember just like losing myself. Like I remember just losing myself and being so insecure and just feeling like I need to prove myself so much. Like I still felt like I needed to prove myself and I needed to be a certain way in order to be liked. And so I just really was wearing a mask. Mm-hmm. And so I would go back to that version of me and I would just go back and just tell I call him Jeezy. I would just tell Jeezy, I'd be like, hey bro, like you don't have anything to prove. You get to just be you, and you is enough. You are more than enough. And just like start to embrace, accept, and love more of you, and stop trying to fulfill that hole with external validation or external getting, high and drunk and sex, and just like trying to fill that void, and like actually take the time to connect more to you and create more from that place. And and I would just that's what I would say.
Incredible. You could also mention, you'd be like, hey, Jeezy, we're all going to have to wear masks for like a really long time, in like 9 years. So just like take yours off now while you can.
Yes, exactly. Yes.
Now, I'm sure there's at least one person in our audience, at least one person listening, who has been in the midst of feeling like they lost it all. And so if someone besides your mother could have shown up in your life and said to you exactly what you needed to hear, would have wanted to hear, at that moment, what would they say to you, or what would you say to the person that's in that position today?
I mean, as far as like my mother, I gotta say she did it based on that first story, and just feel like just reminding me that they love me, reminding me that she loves me no matter what, no matter how much money I have, how many followers I have, no matter how many awards, no matter how much, anything external, like that she just loves me unconditionally just as I am, and to keep going. That like this is not the end. This is just part of the journey, and to just keep going, because the best is yet to come, is what I would like to hear. And what I would tell that person is like, dig deeper, and like fucking love this part. Like love this part. Like let it sink in. The pain, the fear, like feel into it, and alchemize it. Like use it as fuel and alchemize it, and let it fuel you to know that you can persevere in what you're going to create, and just not only just allow it to fuel you, because you will appreciate it. I'm telling you, I look back at those failures and I appreciate that, the hardship now. I'm like, oh man, that those moments, it's like, whew, like those are the moments that make you. And so like you have a choice. So feel into it, and then know that you have a choice, and you can either choose into the narrative that you're not good enough and it won't work and you can't, or you can choose into a narrative that this is just part of the story that's going to make it juicy. So when you're on a podcast one day, when you're on your TEDx stage, when you're writing your book, and you get to choose the narrative that this is not the end of your story. It's just it's just part of the journey, and it's just the beginning. And choose into the future version of you and who you're becoming, and appreciate it. Like give gratitude. And this is part of that God's plan I talked to you about. And I think God tests us and is testing you to see, are you ready for more responsibility? Can you handle hardship? Can you handle moments of adversity? And depending on what you choose, you will either shrink and continue down the narrative of not being good enough and not be able to handle more, or you can choose into like, you can overcome this, and this will be evidence that you can continue to overcome hardship in your life, and yet you're ready for more responsibility. You're ready for it. No matter what comes your way, you will continue to be ready to handle whatever is thrown your way and be resilient.
Mic drop. Beautiful. What incredible inspiration. And I know you just spoke into the lives of so many people who are listening to this interview, past, present, and future.
Love that.
So Gerard, you have so many exciting projects going on right now. You're the founder and steward of Leaders Create Leaders. You've got an amazing film project happening right now that's unfolding. Talk to us about how you're a book in the works. Talk to us about how you're channeling your energy and talents, and how can people continue to interact with you and find out more about your incredible work?
Oh, thank you. For me, it's just like stepping more into my creativity. One of the things that I realized was I was feeling like I needed to get to a certain level in order for me to make time for these really important, passionate, purposeful projects, and like just ways to express creatively, like painting again and creating art. And like I said, I did this spoken word poetry, and I've never done that before. And I just started giving myself permission. It was like, I stop waiting and stop thinking you need to get to a certain level in order for you to make time for these projects, and start thinking about like, what are the projects that you're going to be most proud of, that your future version of you is going to be most proud of, and start prioritizing those things. and allow that to fuel you and fulfill you in a way where like that creative energy will just overflow into the business and overflow into the way that I'm going to continue to create wealth in my life. And so I've broken the masks. I've given myself permission. I'm leaning in and prioritizing creativity. And so one of the biggest projects that I was putting on the shelf was my book for so many years. And so I wanted to make sure that I was in integrity. It wasn't just a book to get more leads into the business or some business book. It was like, no, this is a book that's like, I want to pass down to my great grandkids one day. I want to be really proud of. And so I decided to really take the time to build the team around it. I went to Peru. I started just creating time, and creating space and allowing myself to connect to spirit and to be clear my vessel and allow myself to just really be a channel to what the message that needs to come through from spirit. And and the message that came through is like this story of ancestral leadership is what I'm calling it. And allowing us to turn wounds into wisdom and create a meaningful legacy and understand our individual lineage and the connection that you have to your own ancestry and how that's playing a role in who you get to be and the seed you get to plant for future generations, and not just individually, but also for the collective and understanding the ancestry of all of us and the global scale and the ancestry of humanity and how we get to play a role in the future legacy of our planet and of our species. And so I've been really making time for that. I launched a prologue to the film We Are the New Ancestors. And so anybody who would like to check that out, you can go to watnafilm.com, which is WATNA film.com. Watna stands for We Are the New Ancestors. So watnafilm.com, and you'll be able to opt in to get the prologue. It's 45 minutes. It goes into 11 principles that I talk about in regards to ancestral leadership. And I'm building a whole film project, NFT project, and the book to be like what's going to root and ground this movement around ancestral leadership. So I'm really excited about that and bringing that work into the mastermind at Leaders Create Leaders. And I would love to connect with all of you, whether you want to just let me know how this podcast has impacted you. And if you watch the film or if you listen to this, shoot me a message. My most active platform is Instagram. And so I'm just at Gerard Adams, GerardAdams. And you can just DM me on Instagram or shoot me an email, ga@gerardadams.com. And I'm just so grateful. Thank you, Taryn, for giving me a platform to share a little bit more about what's present and alive for me today and my story.
Well, it's beautiful. It's incredible learning about your journey over these, over your lifespan, really, for you to consolidate those incredible stories of resilience and challenge down for us. And it's also been tremendous for me. It was in May of 2019 that we met in Tulum, and I sort of walked on this shuttle and there was like a seat open next to you. Yeah. And I was like, sort of sat down, and you're sort of like, who this, and then we just had this like amazing conversation and connection. And it's just been a wonderful opportunity for me to know you. You uplift me as a person, you up-level me as a person. And I'm tremendously grateful for your presence and the work that you're doing, not only in the world, but also in my life. So thank you for everything that you do. I'm so excited about your book, about Leaders Create Leaders, continuing to grow and expand around your groundbreaking work on ancestral leadership. And I just know you're going to continue to lead in so many very important ways.
Oh, well, thank you so much, Taryn. I'll never forget that golf cart ride into the jungle. Okay. And we actually had a video, we have a video together. And that's something that like I'd love for when this podcast comes out, like we can reshare. But I interviewed you on that bumpy golf cart
I remember.
about your practices. And I love what you're building. I love the 5 practices of resilience, especially the one around vulnerability. And I believe in your mission. I believe in this platform that you're creating. I believe in you as a leader and as a voice for this generation and for the future generations to come. And so just aho, congrats. I'm so proud of what you created. And it's been an honor to just be your friend. For your listeners to hear, like, Taryn is one of the most just thoughtful, generous, kind human beings in my life. She has sent us gifts as her daughter is about to arrive to the home, and thoughtful gifts, artwork and letters and text and voice notes, and just taking time where we've gone on hikes and shared so vulnerably about things happening in our life. And I cherish our friendship. And so I'm going to continue to support any way I can and empower you. And so just thank you for your friendship. And yeah, I can't wait to hear what your audience thinks of this show. And we get to do this again. We should do more of this. I'd love to have you on the Leaders Create Leaders podcast. We get to create some more dope content together.
I'm in 1,000%. And anytime you say dope, I'm here for it.
All right, cool.
Thanks, everyone, for tuning in. What an incredible interview with Gerard Adams. We've got links and all kinds of opportunities for you to connect with Gerard, Leaders Create Leaders, Ancestral Leadership in our show notes. And I know Gerard would just be delighted to hear from you. So please reach out, and thank you for joining us on Flourish or Fold, Stories of Resilience.